Good evening. I'm Kelda Yoon. It's been almost 1 week since LCBO workers went on strike, and there's no immediate end in sight. Premier Doug Ford making it clear today the province is moving forward with its plans to open up the alcohol retail market, shutting down the union's demands to reconsider its plan. Tyler Cheese has the latest.
Doug's not listening. He's not listening to us. He's not listening to the members that he says he's talking to.
Representatives for LCBO workers are pushing back against Premier Doug Ford and a recent offer that includes converting 400 casual employees to permanent full-time.
We've been asking him to come to the table and give us that guarantee. And when he says job security, that he offered us 400 jobs, well, that's great, but thousands of jobs are on the line.
Meanwhile, the Premier is doubling down on the province's position on ready-to-drink beverages, or RTDs, something that's become a sticking point between the two sides.
If they want to negotiate over RTD, the deal's off. I'm going to repeat that. That ship has sailed. I've told the employees that the deal is off. It represents a very small percentage of overall sales, and we're putting those into retail.
The union representing workers has been fighting to keep RTDs in-house. Now, in response to the Premier's stance, they want assurances that the LCBO won't lose out.
The question we have been asking since day one is, how will you be making up these revenues? Not only that, we've been asking how much. We've asked them in disclosure through the bargaining process, how much do you anticipate you are going to lose? Because that translates into how many jobs are going to be lost. How many of our members are now going to be on unemployment? We need to know those numbers.
The other major issue on hand is the privatization of the LCBO, something Ford says he won't do.
We aren't selling the LCBO. We're not putting spirits into the retail stores, the big box stores. There's going to be a great LCBO store to contribute to the people of Ontario.
But the union isn't buying that.
We do not believe him, not at all. Our members do not believe him. We've seen what's been happening over the last 7 years. We've watched the gradual privatization of our work.
The workers say they'll keep fighting to ensure alcohol revenues continue to support the province's public services rather than going into the pockets of retail CEOs. Tyler Cheese, CBC News, Toronto.
Ford also speaking out on the Ontario Science Centre today for the first time since it shut its doors more than 2 weeks ago. The Premier calling the building a total mess and not worth fixing. Meanwhile, the closure is continuing to outrage many people who believe the building can be saved. Queen's Park reporter Lorena Redicop has the latest.
At the end of the day, this is not a safe building.
Premier Doug Ford took questions about the Science Centre closure for the first time and insists it was the right move.
I'm not chancing it. I'm just not going to chance kids or people to be in there.
And he says a peer review of the engineering report that led to the closure will come out tomorrow.
You'll fall off your chair when you see all the issues we have down there, not just the roof.
But some question whether the shutdown was necessary. At issue are the lighter weight concrete roofing panels, known as RAC, common more than 50 years ago when the Science Centre was built, but no longer used today. The engineering report found that among the 3 buildings, only around 6% of the roof was considered at high or critical risk. Plus, not all of the roof was inspected. 4 experts who reviewed the engineering report all told CBC the closure wasn't needed.
They looked up on the underside of the roof and looked to see signs of deterioration. We designed structural members.
We went back to one of them today, given Ford's comments.
The professional opinions have been misused to suit a predetermined direction that the government has decided on.
The Liberal MPP for the riding that includes the Science Centre has similar concerns.
There are other buildings that are 55 years old and older. Royal Ontario Museum, Casa Loma, CN Tower, Queen's Park. These all require significant amounts of maintenance, but I don't see anyone proposing to suddenly shut them down on a Friday afternoon.
The infrastructure minister's office has said the total capital cost to fix the building would be $478 million. The premier says it's not worth it.
It just doesn't make sense to throw good money into an old, decrepit building. That place is absolutely just a total mess from top to bottom, to front to back, to every single building. Even the bridgeway is closed, the air conditioning's gone. It'd be a foolish decision.
The government is looking for a temporary science centre site elsewhere before building a permanent location at Ontario Place, scheduled to open in 2028 at the earliest. Lorenda Redicott, CBC News, Toronto.
It was a wet Wednesday as the tail end of what used to be Hurricane Beryl moved through parts of Ontario and Quebec. It made for a slippery morning commute, and rainfall warnings remain in effect tonight. Totals of 40 to 60 millimeters of rain is expected to have fallen when all is said and done. Environment Canada is warning of possible flash floods and water pooling on roads and potential localized flooding in low-lying areas. Conditions are expected to improve as we get into Thursday. We'll check in with Colette for a look at what tomorrow holds a little later in the show. It's an all too common scenario in this city. You're faced with an emergency, you dial 911, and you get put on hold. In an effort to lessen wait times and make things more efficient, Toronto Police today completed the first step in upgrading its 911 system. Nama Weingarten takes a look.
Getting put on hold when calling 911 in Toronto has become a reality for many. But new technology started rolling out in the city today. Toronto Police have switched their phone system from analog to digital. It's the first phase of what they're calling Next Generation 911. There won't be any difference in how you call them in emergencies. That stays the same.
It gives us a better management of the incoming calls. So we can manage them by a map, looking at what's going on across the city. And making sure we don't miss anything that's happening around the city when we have a lot of calls clustered in from one location.
Advocates note that Toronto Police have long struggled with 911 wait times.
They're making a change that might be necessary from a technological point of view, but the change that's really needed is from a public service point of view. And they are not dealing with that.
I didn't realize this was possible. I was put on hold for several minutes.
Getting put on hold is something Torontonian Brett House knows all too well. He was once placed on hold for 5 minutes when calling about a person having a mental and physical health crisis. He says that in total, he's been put on hold by 911 3 times.
It's great that emergency services in the city of Toronto are looking at new ways to be contacted and opening up more channels to do so. I think that also creates a responsibility on all of us to use those channels wisely.
Police say this change will help Toronto catch up with the rest of the world when it comes to our 911 systems. London Police began implementing its next-gen services last month.
The world has moved ahead of us in 911, and because we need to be robust and we don't take risks with our 911 systems, but that's meant that we've lagged behind. So this process is actually catching us up to the kind of telephony infrastructure that the rest of the world is already using.
This new generation of 911 technology will eventually also allow people to easily send police photos and potentially videos. All emergency call centers in Canada will have to implement the first phase of this new technology by March 2025. In the meantime, Toronto Police say they're trying to deal with the issue of people getting put on hold by hiring more call takers to address staffing shortages at their center. Nama Weingarten, CBC News, Toronto.
A man in his 20s is in hospital with life-threatening injuries tonight after a shooting in North York, the second shooting in the region in as many days. It happened near Steeles Avenue and Signet Drive just before 4 p.m. Police say an SUV was seen fleeing the location. They haven't released any information about potential suspects. Former Raptors forward Jonte Porter pleaded guilty in court today to charges stemming from a betting scandal that got him booted from the NBA for life. The NBA said Porter placed over a dozen bets on basketball games and gave bettors confidential information before pulling himself from games to influence wagers. He was handed a lifetime ban from playing in the league back in April. Porter says he was trying to clear large debts he collected from his gambling addiction. He entered a guilty plea today to a charge of conspiracy to commit wire fraud. He is set to be sentenced in December and could face up to 4 years in prison. Welcome back. Misleading information about sunscreen is all over TikTok, telling people to stop using it or they'll get cancer. Some posts have racked up close to 1 million views. But as Tashana Reed shows us, these claims contradict decades of scientific evidence about the dangers of UV radiation and the benefits of sunscreen.
To stabilize it and make it illegal.
It's a trending topic. Online influencers taking aim at sunscreen.
Sunscreen is a scam, and here's why.
I never wear sunscreen.
These are actually more dangerous than you burning.
Mainstream sunscreens.
Making claims to hundreds of thousands of viewers, it does more harm than good.
These sunscreens that are on the market today are mostly toxic, and we know that they can actually cause cancer.
But get the sun, don't get the sunscreen.
This dermatologist says that couldn't be further from the truth.
Sunscreen is one of the #1 things that helps us prevent cancer. So the thing that causes cancer, particularly skin cancer, is the sun.
Sunscreen protects skin from the sun's ultraviolet radiation. There are 2 types of products, mineral and chemical, and both work in different ways to block harmful rays from being absorbed in our skin.
But you look at the whole breadth of the data that's available, and on the whole, it shows that all these chemicals are safe, which is why they're Health Canada approved.
Quebec's Order of Chemists even released a statement saying the misinformation circulating online could endanger public health, adding these influencers generally don't have the scientific expertise to assess chemical safety.
The people who are talking to you, who are they? What's their credential? Where did they get this information from?
Is there proof?
And now a counter movement, including medical experts, are debunking these myths online.
There is no evidence showing that sunscreen ages you.
Still, at this Toronto beach, sunscreen isn't a priority for everyone.
Don't feel the need for it, especially with the chemicals that are in sunscreens.
Most days I don't put any at all.
Well, what you really want to do is protect yourself against the carcinogen that's coming from the sun's rays.
About 65% of melanoma cases, the deadliest form of skin cancer, are caused by UV radiation, but it is preventable, say experts.
Even one blistering burn as a child or a young adult doubles your risk of melanoma.
To avoid the risks, experts say use a sunscreen of SPF 30 or higher year-round, that adults apply 2 to 3 tablespoons every 2 hours, and to only take medical advice from trusted professionals. Tashana Reed, CBC News, Toronto.
There's an exciting green energy initiative happening at George Brown College's newest education building. Limberlost Place will be heated and cooled using a deep lake water cooling system, making it the first mass timber net zero building to connect to the low carbon network. Talia Ricci has more.
You probably wouldn't imagine that these lake views would have anything to do with keeping students comfortable at a downtown campus. But that's exactly what's happening at George Brown's Limberlost Place. And the process starts at the bottom of Lake Ontario.
There's these 3 intake pipes that go deep into the bottom of Lake Ontario, out 5.5 kilometers out into the lake. They come back to a water filtration plant on Toronto Island. There, the water is clean for drinking water purposes. That's completely operated by the City of Toronto, not by Enwave. But that water then comes into a pumping station located over here at the John Street pumping station. Before it goes out to the tap for drinking water purposes, we actually borrow that water, pull the cooling energy out. It cools a closed-loop district energy system that Enwave operates in downtown Toronto, and that delivers cooling to our customers.
The technology also cools notable landmarks like the Scotiabank Arena, the Fairmont Royal York Hotel, and Brookfield Place. Limberlost Place will be the first mass timber net zero building to be cooled and heated using Enwave's system.
What's interesting about our low carbon heating system is it's actually leveraging that same cooling infrastructure that we talked about, that cooling loop that we use to cool buildings in downtown Toronto. In the wintertime, we can take that waste heat energy. When we cool a building, it comes back into our system as waste heat. We can take that waste heat energy, upgrade it through heat pumps using electricity, which are inherently low carbon, and then produce hot water from that. So that hot water now goes out to serve Limberlost, making it a low carbon building, an actual net zero low carbon building.
George Brown College has made sustainability a huge focus when it comes to the mass timber 10-story academic building. The deep lake water cooling system is just a part of it.
District energy really means that we're sharing energy. We're not
using too much or too little, but we're actually sharing that with the broader community, which is a really important concept in terms of sustainability and of resilience. We want to be at the forefront of technology, and so that's what Limberlost really represents. The technologies in the building, how sustainable it is. It really sets a bar and sets an example for the broader community, and also is a living laboratory for our students to be able to learn within the building as well.
Construction is set to wrap at the end of this year, with plans to open the building in 2025. Talia Ricci, CBC News, Toronto.
The countdown is on and the celebration's already starting as the Toronto Zoo gets set to turn 50 later this summer. Festivities were kicked off by the breaking of ground on a new conservation centre that staff say will usher in a new era for the community. Brittany Billette has more on how the zoo has evolved through the years.
Everyone at the zoo is getting ready for its 50th anniversary, including Charles the gorilla, who's been here since the beginning.
It's a birthday anniversary, it's a special day all in one.
Back in 1974, the zoo first opened its doors as the Metro Toronto Zoo. And while its name has changed, other things remain the same. Animals are still the star of the show, and staff say then like now, the zoo is a leader in its field.
The Toronto Zoo was the first zoo in the world to hire a full-time nutritionist,
putting the animals first through its focus on innovation, education, and research.
We were actually at the forefront of zoo layout back in 1974, but really what has changed is our approach to animal well-being, our science, this more holistic approach to looking after animals and looking after nature. It's kind of coming together.
There's been plenty of milestones throughout the decades at the zoo, like when the city welcomed 2 giant pandas on loan from China back in 2013. And there's been lots of highly anticipated births, including a baby rhino in December 2023.
That connection to the animals has always been there throughout the decades, so that our community is actually part of us.
And then there are the countless memories people have made at the zoo.
It was my first job ever.
That's where this volunteer first met her husband.
At McDonald's, on the grill, he was turning Big Macs.
Even her son worked here once, driving the Zoomobile.
I think that's really, such an important part of what the zoo really brings beyond just being a zoo. It's really a part of the community.
And now the zoo is expanding. It's building a $64 million community conservation center, a free public space fitted with a new habitat for the zoo's river otters, plus labs and classrooms for U of T Scarborough campus students.
For students to be able to go out, collect samples, bring them in, do some analysis or stabilize samples, and then bring them back to the university, it kind of creates a field station for us right in the Rouge National Urban Park.
The building is expected to be completed in 2026, and staff say it represents a new era for their facility. The zoo says it's welcomed close to 60 million guests since it opened 50 years ago, and it's expecting tens of thousands more leading up to its anniversary on August 15. Brittany Billette, CBC News, Toronto.
All right, let's go to Colette now. And Colette, we can expect maybe a few more downpours tonight.
Yeah, we just have to get through tonight and then a lot of improvement for us into Thursday. So big changes are coming as we'll see the system move beyond us. Carrying on for now, though, with the rainfall warning and talking about, additional amounts that we'll be seeing here in that 10 to 20, 25 millimeter range, a little heightened a bit further north from the city. And then where we've got that batch kind of moving through, it's a special weather statement over towards eastern Ontario. Slightly lesser amounts there and why it's not at the warning criteria. But in terms of that, as we take you from midnight to about 11 a.m. tomorrow, you can see this is what's still to come. However, much of it, I think, will be over by at least the second part of the morning commute. There might still be some drizzle kind of coming down or a little bit of light precipitation, but the heavier stuff really, or some of those embedded thunderstorms, and that works its way through in the overnight hours. Highs today were certainly brought down, although because this is, the remnants of a tropical system, it was still feeling very muggy, but the temperatures themselves brought down as the rain has been pushing through. So still some of that heavier batch to move through as we get into the wee overnight hours, but here it is by 9 a.m. So still, this is just some light showery activity. This is not heavy stuff. And all the way back towards southwestern Ontario, primarily dry, then even some clearing coming on in, and just some scattered showers sort of developing. Slightly different story into eastern Ontario, where it just lingers and takes a little more time to move on out. Into Friday, late day, I do bring some showers back into the forecast. Again, just kind of scattered, and that's more towards the evening hours. The overnight temperatures as well, they don't change that much from where we were for the daytime highs, but they are going to rise more significantly. There'll be more of a difference there as we get into Thursday afternoon. The more sunshine we get, the better chance that we get to that 25. I think the clouds are still going to be kind of thick through those morning hours. And then for Friday, there's the late day showers into Saturday morning, 28. Here you go. The weekend looking pretty good. I know I've got showers on the icon for Sunday at 30 degrees for the high. The humidex will be in the mid-30s, but it's only a 30% chance, so it's not, in that case, a widespread rain coming through on Sunday.
And that is good news. Thanks so much. And that's our show for you tonight. I will see you back here tomorrow night at 6. Have a great night, everyone.